The shocking secret hidden in this 800-year-old mummy's DNA left scientists in tears. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friends, have you ever wondered, are the things we know about history truly accurate? Or are they just a tiny fraction of countless secrets still lying silently beneath the ground? Because the truth is, with each passing year, archaeologists continue to uncover discoveries that leave the entire world stunned. Things that once seemed impossible suddenly appear right before our eyes. Stories buried for thousands of years are unexpectedly revealed with a single swing of a shovel. And what's fascinating is that the more we uncover, the more we realize that history is far more complex than what textbooks have ever told us. There are mummies carrying strange and mysterious secrets, ancient structures built with technology far beyond their time, and even objects that seem to resemble something from the modern world. Each discovery is not just an artifact, it's a piece of the past that helps us better understand people, their beliefs, and the lives they once lived. But at the same time, these discoveries raise countless questions. Who created them? Why did they exist? And most importantly, how many secrets are still waiting to be found? It's very possible that right beneath our feet, at this very moment, there are ruins and untold stories waiting for the day they are finally uncovered. So in today's journey, join me as we begin to unravel these mysteries one by one. Archaeological discoveries that have amazed the entire world and may just change the way you see history forever. Are you ready? If so, let's begin with our very first discovery right now. 800-year-old medieval mummy in a birch bark cocoon hidden beneath Arctic ice. In a land frozen year-round, where ice and snow blanket everything, just about 18 miles from the Arctic Circle, archaeologists made a startling discovery. Something that looked like a cocoon, but this was no silkworm cocoon. It was made from birch bark, and what sent chills down everyone's spine was what lay inside. A mummy from the Middle Ages. Yes, what you're hearing is real. This discovery was found near the town of Salikard in Russia's Tumen region. The area has long been known for its unsolved archaeological mysteries, but this time, the find went far beyond anyone's imagination. According to archaeologists, the cocoon measures about 4.3 feet in length and roughly 12 inches in width, just enough to hold a small body. It was lined with a thin layer of metal on the inside and wrapped in birch bark on the outside, all buried deep beneath layers of ice for centuries. Everything about it points to a completely unusual burial method. Unlike traditional practices we're familiar with, no wooden coffins, no pyramids, no stone tombs, this burial used metal and bark as if to seal the body against time itself. And in doing so, it unintentionally created a miracle. The body was preserved almost intact for centuries. The leader of the excavation, Alexander Gusev, made a statement that immediately sparked curiosity. It is very likely that this is a mummy, and its condition may be remarkably well preserved. He even suggested that the remains inside could belong to a child or a teenager. Yes, a child buried beneath frozen ground for more than 800 years. Can you feel how haunting this story is becoming? But the question that puzzled scientists the most was, who was this child? To find the answer, researchers began what seemed like an almost impossible journey. Trying to locate the child's family after more than 800 years, they conducted DNA testing, comparing the results with indigenous Siberian groups such as the Khanty and Nenets, as well as isolated communities living near Lake Muji. Their goal was to determine whether anyone in the modern world might share the same bloodline. Professor Peter Slaminsky of the Moscow Institute of Molecular Genetics explained that they would first analyze mitochondrial DNA to trace the maternal lineage, then examine nuclear DNA to determine the paternal origin, a highly complex and challenging process. Over time, human populations have mixed extensively, making it far more difficult to trace ancient ancestry. And that's not all. Scientists from South Korea also joined the project to reconstruct the boy's face. But this task was anything but easy. His facial bones were not fully developed and had been deformed after centuries underground. Researchers had to use CT scanning technology to digitally reconstruct the skull, then rebuild the face detail by detail. Think about it. A child from the Middle Ages is slowly being brought back to life in the modern world. Fascinating, isn't it? However, to complete that journey and uncover the boy's identity, scientists must invest an enormous amount of time and effort into research and analysis. And during that process, they discovered something quite thought-provoking. The boy showed signs of parasitic worm infection, suggesting that his diet may have included raw or undercooked fish. This reflects aspects of life at the time, when consuming raw food was relatively common, especially among children. In fact, infants may even have been given raw meat to suck on. It sounds unbelievable, but that was the reality hundreds of years ago. Additionally, the orientation of the burials is highly unusual. All the bodies were positioned with their feet pointing toward the Gorny-Poli River, as if it held some spiritual significance, perhaps a belief about the afterlife, or a ritual we have yet to fully understand. Notably, archaeologists didn't just find mummies. They also uncovered valuable artifacts such as bronze bowls of Persian origin, iron combat knives, and silver medallions dating back to the 7th or 9th century. These items suggest that the civilization once living here was not isolated, but instead had far-reaching connections with distant regions. An Arctic civilization bearing Persian influences? Hard to believe, isn't it? What's even more remarkable is that these mummies were not intentionally created. There was no embalming process like in ancient Egypt. Instead, their preservation was the result of a unique combination of metal, extreme cold, and a bit of natural luck. The copper layer helped prevent oxidation, and the global cooling during the 14th century inadvertently turned this place into a rare natural storage site for mummies. In fact, it's so unique that a scientist named Natalia Fyodorova once remarked that nowhere else in the world, outside of permafrost regions or peat bogs, has yielded such a concentration of naturally preserved mummies like this site. And now, that birch bark cocoon may be the final piece of the puzzle. A child, a mysterious civilization, and a journey spanning centuries, all waiting to be revealed. So until scientists finally uncover the true identity of this child, let's wait together for the answer. Mysterious set of remains found beside the mummy of a renowned bishop in Europe. A coffin had rested undisturbed for more than 3 centuries. No suspicion, no questions. And yet, with just a single examination using modern technology, every secret hidden inside was suddenly brought to light. This is the story of what happened in the city of Lund, in southern Sweden, a place where an ancient crypt lies beneath a grand cathedral. Inside it rests the body of Peter Winstrup, a prominent 17th century bishop. You see, for 336 years, the bishop's remains lay quietly in his coffin. It was believed to be one of the best preserved mummies in Europe at the time, and that belief was well-founded. Despite the passage of centuries, his clothing remained intact. His face was still clearly recognizable, to the point that when compared with historical portraits, there was almost no difference. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say his body seemed nearly frozen in time. But then, everything changed. When scientists decided to use CT scanning technology to examine the inside of the coffin, their initial goal was quite simple: to learn more about the bishop's life and the social conditions of 17th century Sweden. However, what they discovered was far from expected. Inside the coffin, there was not only the bishop's body, but also a human fetus. Further analysis revealed that it was approximately 5 to 6 months old, meaning it was a premature child who had never had the chance to be born. What puzzled scientists wasn't just its presence, but the question, why was it inside the coffin of a bishop? Per Karsten, director of the Historical Museum at Lund University, openly admitted that they had never anticipated such a finding. Over the years, the coffin had even been opened before, yet no one had ever noticed the fetus. It had been hidden so carefully, almost as if it were a secret deliberately buried. So what connection could there possibly be between these two individuals? To answer that, researchers began planning DNA tests, but early assessments suggest that the child was most likely not biologically related to the bishop. And this is where the story takes on a more human, almost unsettling dimension. One theory suggests that the fetus may have been the illegitimate child of someone in that society. When it died, people may have taken advantage of the bishop's formal funeral to secretly place the child's body inside his coffin, a way of hiding it where no one would dare to question. It may sound simple, but if true, it reveals a great deal about the society of that time: honor, religion, and the kinds of secrets people were willing to carry with them to the grave. Chilling, isn't it? Of course, this remains only a theory. Nothing has been definitively proven. Returning to the central figure, Peter Winstrup, he was far more than just a bishop. In his lifetime, he was a respected scholar, a scientist, a collector, and a theologian. Most notably, he was one of the founders of Lund University in 1666, an institution that still ranks among the top 100 universities in the world today. A man of great influence, yet even in death, he continues to be at the center of an unsolved mystery. Modern research has also revealed that during his life, Winstrup may have suffered from multiple illnesses at once: pneumonia, gout, arthritis, gallstones, and even tuberculosis. A body marked by the toll of time, yet preserved in near-perfect condition after death. And amid all of this, the presence of a tiny fetus only deepens the mystery. A renowned bishop, an unborn child, two lives lying side by side in silence for more than 300 years. What do you think? Is this merely a coincidence or a secret that history has intentionally kept hidden? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. 210-million-year-old footprints imprinted in stone that challenge the history of evolution. You know, there are times when science seems to have all the answers firmly in hand, but just one small discovery can turn everything upside down. And the story of these 210-million-year-old footprints preserved in stone is a perfect example of that. In fact, it left the entire scientific community stunned. The story takes place in Africa, where a research team from the University of Cape Town was surveying ancient fossil layers. During their work, they discovered footprints embedded in rock dating back as far as 210 million years. At first, that might not sound unusual. Fossils that old aren't exactly rare, but what shocked them was the shape of these footprints. At a glance, they look almost identical to the footprints of birds. Now think about that for a moment. Does that make sense? Of course not, right? Because according to what science has established so far, birds, or at least their closest ancestors, only appeared around 150 million years ago. That's about 60 million years later than these footprints. In other words, these footprints appeared before their supposed owners even existed. And that's where things become incredibly puzzling. It didn't stop at just a few isolated samples. The research team collected fossils from 4 different sites within the same region. After careful analysis, they realized there were actually 2 completely distinct types of footprints. The first type is larger, with broad feet and long toes that are positioned close together. This type is still somewhat explainable. Scientists believe it closely resembles a known fossil footprint called Enomoepus, which is thought to have been left by a dinosaur. So for this type, everything still falls within the boundaries of established knowledge. But the second type, that's where things start to feel unfamiliar. These footprints are smaller, about half the size of the first type. The toes are more slender, clearly separated, and most striking of all, their overall shape closely resembles the footprints of modern birds, almost unbelievably so. Not just a vague similarity, but enough to make people seriously wonder, could these actually be bird footprints? But if they are, then where did these birds come from? That question is exactly what has scientists scratching their heads. At this point, there is still no definitive answer. However, several hypotheses have been proposed. One possibility is that these are the footprints of a 3-toed dinosaur, a group of ancient creatures believed to be related to both modern birds and crocodiles. If that hypothesis is correct, it could mean that bird-like characteristics began to appear much earlier than we previously thought, long before birds officially emerged as a distinct group. Put simply, evolution may have been quietly experimenting with bird-like traits tens of millions of years earlier, gradually refining them over time. Another possibility is that our current understanding of the evolutionary tree is still incomplete. There may be many undiscovered branches, many transitional species we have yet to find, and these footprints could be one of the few remaining clues. You see, just a few footprints can raise a cascade of profound questions. They're not merely traces of a creature that once walked the earth. They are evidence that the history of life on this planet may be far more complex than we ever imagined. Scientists believe this discovery could open up an entirely new direction of research. It may help us better visualize how animals lived hundreds of millions of years ago, how they moved, adapted, and evolved. More importantly, it forces us to rethink the origins of birds, one of the most familiar groups of animals today. Who knows? The birds you see every day may have a history far older and far more mysterious than anything we've ever been taught. And perhaps, beneath those ancient layers of rock, there are still more footprints lying in silence, waiting to be discovered, ready to continue telling the unfinished story of our planet. It's entirely possible, isn't it? The Death Pit, containing 6,770 animal skeletons, revealing a terrifying prehistoric sacrificial ritual. There are discoveries that send a chill down your spine at first glance, not because they are incredibly ancient, but because what they reveal is so difficult to explain. And this time, the story begins with a pit that, when excavated, was found to contain as many as 6,770 animal skeletons. Just hearing that number already feels unsettling, doesn't it? This site is located in southwestern Spain, at an archaeological complex known as Casas del Turuñuelo. At first, researchers had no idea they were about to encounter one of the most shocking discoveries related to ancient rituals. But as each layer of soil was removed, and as more skeletons came into view, everything began to change. It wasn't just a few dozen, or even a few hundred, but thousands of skeletons piled on top of each other within a single pit. What's even more striking is that they didn't all belong to one species. After analysis, scientists identified at least 52 different animal species. Among them were 41 horses, 4 pigs, 6 types of livestock, and even a dog. An astonishing diversity, but also deeply haunting. So think about it. What could have caused so many animals to be killed and buried in one place? At first, possibilities like disease or natural disaster came to mind, but those theories were quickly ruled out. Most of the animals appeared to have been fully grown and healthy before death. There were no signs of illness or weakness. So what was the real reason? The marks on the bones told the story. Most of the animals showed clear signs of butchering, as if they had been slaughtered for meat before being buried. This led researchers to believe that this was not simply a burial site, but possibly the remains of a massive feast, part of a large-scale sacrificial ritual carried out by people of that time. A feast, but one infused with the meaning of offering. This theory became even more convincing when researchers examined how the bodies were arranged. The horses in particular were not randomly discarded. They were placed in pairs. This suggests they may have been working animals, used for pulling carts or carrying goods, and likely held significant value in that society. In other words, they were not chosen at random, but deliberately selected. And that's not all. Around the pit, traces of burned plant material were also discovered. These remains suggest that the animals may have been burned as part of the ritual, similar to how offerings were presented to deities in many ancient cultures. Sound familiar? Throughout history and mythology, animal sacrifice is nothing new. For example, in the Odyssey, King Nestor is said to have sacrificed as many as 81 bulls to honor the gods. In Greek mythology, Peleus, the father of Achilles, also sacrificed 50 black sheep, praying for his son's safe return from war. But those are stories from texts and legends. In reality, it is extremely rare to find archaeological evidence of animal sacrifice on such a massive scale. And that's exactly why the bone pit at Casas del Turuñuelo is so extraordinary. It is not just an archaeological discovery, it is a gateway into the spiritual world of prehistoric people, where belief, ritual, and sacrifice may have gone far beyond what we can imagine today. Think about it. What could drive people to kill thousands of healthy animals? Was it fear of nature? Absolute faith in the gods? Or a ritual so ancient that we can no longer understand it? The more we try to uncover the truth, the more elusive it becomes. And perhaps those silent skeletons, lying undisturbed for thousands of years, are still waiting for us to finally unravel the true story behind this death pit. 1,200-year-old mansion in the Negev desert. In the middle of a barren desert, where sand and wind seem to swallow nearly every trace of time, there exists a secret no one expected. It's not a simple hut, nor just ordinary ruins, but an entire luxurious mansion that once belonged to a powerful figure more than 1,200 years ago. Yes, you heard that right. A mansion. This story takes place in the Negev desert in southern Israel, near a Bedouin town. When archaeologists first began excavating the area, they had no idea they were about to uncover a structure that could reshape our understanding of life in such a harsh ancient environment. Then, layer by layer, the sand was cleared away. A structure slowly emerged. Not small, not temporary, but a true mansion. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, it was described as a luxurious rural estate. a phrase that alone gives you a sense of the wealth of its former owner. Inside, there were marble-paved corridors and walls decorated with intricate frescoes, details typically found in major cities, not in the middle of a desert. The house has been dated to around the 8th to 9th century, during the early Islamic period. Its architectural design is also remarkable. Rooms built with vaulted ceilings arranged around a central courtyard, a layout that both helped cool the space and created a shared living area. But it's not just the appearance that stands out. What was found inside is even more striking. Archaeologists discovered remains of oil lamps, once used to light the entire mansion at night. There were also underground storage rooms, along with a large water reservoir. In desert conditions, having such a water supply wasn't just a convenience, it was a clear sign of power and wealth. Not everyone could build such a complex system. Because of this, researchers believe the person who once lived here was no ordinary individual. Most likely, it was a local ruler, a figure of high status, capable of transforming a harsh landscape into a comfortable residence, perhaps even using it for hosting and entertainment. Simply put, this wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of power. What makes this discovery even more fascinating is that, before it was revealed, almost no one knew that such luxurious structures had ever existed in the Negev. The region has long been considered dry and underdeveloped in the past, but this mansion proves the opposite. People once lived here in remarkable comfort, right in a place that seems almost uninhabitable. And there's more. The mansion is located near an ancient mosque, another rare discovery previously announced by Israeli archaeologists. This suggests that the area was once a well-developed community, with organization, cultural life, and clear religious practices. Not just a temporary stop, but a place that once held real significance. Now, after completing the excavation, scientists are planning to preserve the entire mansion complex along with its related structures. Because they understand that this is not just a ruin, it's an important piece of the historical puzzle of the entire region. You see, sometimes history isn't found in famous or crowded places. Instead, it hides in the most unexpected locations, like these dry, overlooked lands. Strange yet incredibly fascinating, isn't it? "2,000-year-old air conditioning system of the ancient Romans." This discovery comes from an ancient settlement called Cambadunum, located in present-day Bavaria, Germany. When archaeologists excavated the site, they uncovered a villa that left everyone astonished, not because of its size, but because of what lay beneath it, an incredibly sophisticated ancient climate control system. According to research, Cambadunum was once one of the oldest urban centers in Germany, established during the Roman Empire as it expanded across Europe. And although the Romans are often remembered as conquerors, they also left behind an extraordinary legacy of engineering. This villa is a perfect example. The structure spans approximately 8,600 square feet, has 2 stories, and was equipped with a range of features that could be considered high-tech for its time. But as mentioned earlier, the most remarkable feature lies beneath the floor: a massive and intelligently designed heating system. The ancient builders constructed rows of small pillars to raise the floor, creating 2 separate layers. The space in between allowed hot air to circulate throughout the rooms. From a central furnace, heat was distributed through channels, spreading evenly across the entire house. Simply put, this was an early form of underfloor heating, the same concept still used in many modern European homes today. Not only did it keep the living space warm, but it also provided heat for hot bathing pools. This meant the villa's owner could relax in warm water even during freezing winter days. A lifestyle that feels incredibly advanced for 2,000 years ago, right? But that's not all. Researchers from the Cambadunum Archaeological Park also discovered many valuable artifacts inside the villa. Most notable were the Roman mosaics, crafted from small stones imported from various regions and assembled into highly intricate images. Each mosaic was not just art, it was a symbol of wealth. Clearly, the person who lived in this villa was no ordinary individual. It must have been someone of high status, with enough power and financial resources to afford comforts far beyond their time. Not long before this, archaeologists in the city of Pompeii, Italy, also uncovered similar systems. The city was buried after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, which unintentionally preserved an entire civilization in remarkable detail. There, Researchers found complete water supply and drainage systems, large-scale public baths, intelligently designed stone-paved streets, and even food counters resembling modern-day takeout services. It almost sounds like a 21st century city. All of this points to a very clear truth. The technological level of ancient Rome was astonishingly advanced. They didn't just build grand structures, they also knew how to improve quality of life in ways that many other civilizations wouldn't achieve until thousands of years later. And now, as ruins like those at Campadunum continue to be revealed, we're beginning to understand that the past was never as primitive as we once believed. In fact, there may still be many ancient technologies lying hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be discovered, ready to make us rethink history from an entirely new perspective. What do you think? The 11.2-foot metal monolith that appeared and disappeared in Utah, a mystery that confused the world. You know, our world has a very unique way of being mysterious. Some things appear in broad daylight right before our eyes, yet when we look again, they vanish as if they never existed. And the story of the metal monolith in the Utah desert is one of those strange cases. It all began on November 18, 2020. At the time, local officials were flying over a remote area in Utah, counting sheep from the air. It seemed like a routine task, until they looked down and spotted something that clearly didn't belong there. A shiny metal pillar stood upright in the middle of the desert. Amid the dry red rocks, the structure reflected sunlight so brightly that it stood out in a surreal way. From above, it looked like an object that had been planted into the ground, with no natural explanation for its presence. When they got closer, experts confirmed that the structure was about 11.2 feet tall, made of stainless steel with a smooth, reflective surface that showed almost no signs of corrosion from the environment. Think about it, in such a remote desert, who could have transported something that large and installed it there? Before that question could even be answered, something even more puzzling happened. Just a few days after it was discovered, the monolith suddenly disappeared. No trace, no announcement, no one claimed responsibility. Just like the way it appeared, sudden and mysterious, its disappearance was exactly the same. Authorities in Utah quickly launched an investigation, and according to a report from the Bureau of Land Management, the structure was removed on the evening of November 27th. However, the strange part is that no one knows exactly who did it. More importantly, officials confirmed that they were not responsible for removing it. The reason they gave was that it might have been private property, so they chose not to interfere. So who took it away? That question quickly captured public attention. According to experts, transporting and installing a metal structure over 11 feet tall in the middle of a desert is no simple task. It requires manpower, equipment, and time, and certainly couldn't have been done so quietly that no one noticed. Yet from beginning to end, there has been no clear evidence of how it was done. Because of this, countless theories began to emerge. Some believe it was simply an unauthorized art installation, created to attract attention. That makes some sense, as the monolith's design resembles modern symbolic artworks. But then again, if it was art, why was it removed so quickly? And why has no one come forward to claim it? The more you think about it, the stranger it gets. And so, more far-reaching theories began to surface. Some people believe it could have been the work of extraterrestrials. They argue that with technology far beyond human capability, placing a metal structure on Earth and later removing it would be entirely possible. It sounds like science fiction, but you know how it is. When there's no clear explanation, people start considering every possibility. Whether it was art, a prank, or something beyond our understanding, to this day, no one has been able to provide a definitive answer. The monolith appeared, captured the world's attention, and then vanished, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. So what do you think? Who put it there in the middle of the desert? And who took it away? Leave your thoughts in the comments below if you have any ideas about this mystery. A river of mercury, hidden beneath a Maya pyramid. The story began in 2003 after a sudden heavy rainstorm swept across Teotihuacan. Archaeologist Sergio Gomez Chavez arrived to inspect the area and accidentally discovered a small sinkhole right in front of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. When he shined a flashlight into it, he saw nothing but thick darkness, but his instincts told him he was standing before something significant. With a rope tied around his waist and the help of his team, Gomez was lowered into the hole, which led to a mysterious tunnel that had been sealed for nearly 1,800 years. With support from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, he began planning a full excavation. After years of meticulous work using ground-penetrating radar, 3D scanning, and remotely operated robotic vehicles, the team removed more than 1,100 tons of soil from a tunnel approximately 328 feet long. What they uncovered was astonishing. Not only did they find tens of thousands of ancient artifacts, such as jade figurines, crocodile teeth, jade masks, and jaguar bones, but they also discovered something that shocked the world: pools of liquid mercury resting in the final chamber of the tunnel. Mercury, a highly toxic liquid metal, was not only dangerous but extremely rare in ancient times. According to experts, the ancient Maya extracted mercury from cinnabar, a rare red ore that was difficult to mine. So why would they go to such lengths just to bring this toxic substance deep underground? Some archaeologists believe that the mercury symbolized a supernatural river, one that guided souls into the afterlife. It may have marked the entrance to a royal tomb, possibly the first burial site of Teotihuacan's rulers, a resting place that, to this day, has never been definitively found. And it doesn't stop there. The ceiling of the tunnel also contained traces of metallic powder that shimmered like stars in the darkness. Researchers believe the entire journey through the tunnel may have been designed as a ritual reenactment of the passage to the afterlife, where the soul must cross a sacred river to reach the realm of the gods. The dense concentration of artifacts around the final 3 chambers further supports the theory that this site may have once served as a high-status or royal burial complex. As of now, the Mercury River beneath the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl remains an unsolved mystery. But one thing is certain: nowhere else in ancient Mesoamerica has such a large quantity of mercury ever been discovered. Its existence has opened up a wide range of theories about belief systems, power, and funerary rituals within the Teotihuacan civilization. If we say that this site is not just an archaeological ruin, but an unfinished history book, where every layer of earth reveals a new story about humanity, mythology, and secrets buried for thousands of years, that would not be an exaggeration at all. The red-haired pharaoh mummy and the strangest passport in history. In the barren desert of the Valley of the Kings, where some of the greatest secrets of ancient Egyptian civilization were buried, archaeologists in 1881 stumbled upon a discovery that stunned the world. It wasn't gold or treasure. It was a remarkable tomb that, when opened, revealed a nearly intact mummy with striking red hair alongside numerous valuable artifacts. A mummy with bright red hair. Just hearing that already sounds unusual, doesn't it? Because in most people's minds, ancient Egyptians are typically associated with dark or black hair. Yet here, before their eyes, lay a body with vivid red hair, as if it held a story yet to be told. As the artifacts in the tomb were carefully analyzed, the identity of the individual gradually came to light. It was Ramesses II, the greatest pharaoh in Egyptian history, also known as Ramesses the Great. He was born around 1302 BC, ascended the throne after the death of his father, Seti I, and ruled for an astonishing 66 years, a nearly unimaginable length of time in the ancient world. Think about it. 66 years of rule in an era filled with conflict, war, and power struggles. That alone proves he was no ordinary king. By the time of his death in 1213 BC, he was nearly 90 years old, an incredible age for that period. It's even said that he had more than 100 children. However, to be honest, researchers have yet to find definitive evidence to confirm that claim. Still, what history does record is more than enough to make the name Ramesses II legendary. But what truly left experts stunned wasn't his power or longevity, it was his unusual red hair. In ancient Egyptian culture, red hair was more than just a physical trait. It was believed to be associated with Seth, the god of chaos, the desert, and untamed power. So the question arises, was this merely a coincidence, or did Ramesses II carry a deeper symbolic connection? And the story doesn't end there. After being discovered, his mummy was preserved and displayed at the Egyptian Museum starting in 1885. But nearly a century later, in 1974, scientists discovered that the body was being attacked by fungus and was at risk of severe deterioration. At that point, an unprecedented decision was made. The mummy would be sent to France for preservation treatment. That might sound ordinary, but here's the catch. According to Egyptian law, Even the deceased require proper documentation to travel abroad. And so, something truly unbelievable happened. Ramesses II's mummy was issued a passport. Yes, you heard that correctly. A king who had died thousands of years ago was granted an official passport, complete with a photograph of the mummy's face and an occupation listed as King Deceased. It became the first mummy in world history to receive such an extraordinary privilege. When the mummy arrived in France, it was even welcomed with full honors befitting a head of state. After examination and treatment, the body was successfully preserved and returned to Egypt, where it continues to rest in a most extraordinary way. Hearing this, doesn't it give you chills? A ruler who lived more than 3,000 years ago with mysterious red hair. A mummy that once held a passport, and a journey across borders that no one could have imagined. What does all of this tell us? Perhaps that history is not just a collection of dry facts and dates, but a tapestry of strange, fascinating details, so unusual that they make us see the past in a completely different way. 2,000-year-old stone slab, depicting a Roman emperor as an Egyptian pharaoh. Have you ever imagined that a Roman emperor, a symbol of Western power, could appear in the form of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh? It sounds a bit out of place, doesn't it? But history records exactly such a case, and the evidence lies on a stone slab more than 2,000 years old. The story begins when archaeologists were working at the Karnak Temple complex, one of the largest and oldest religious sites in the world, located in Luxor, Egypt. During restoration work at the site, they unexpectedly discovered a rectangular sandstone slab, also known as a stela. The slab isn't particularly large, only about 24 by 16 inches, but what is carved on it made researchers stop and think. On its surface is the image of Tiberius, a well-known Roman emperor, but not in his familiar Roman attire. Instead, he is depicted exactly like an Egyptian pharaoh, performing rituals before the gods. A strangely familiar yet unusual image, right? To understand it more clearly, we need to look at the historical context of the time. When Tiberius ascended to the throne in 14 AD, Egypt had already been a province of the Roman Empire for about 44 years. In other words, although it was under Roman rule, the region still preserved its long-standing cultural and religious traditions. And that's the key point. According to Egyptologist Abdel Ghaffar Wagdi, who led the research team, anyone who ruled Egypt at that time had to uphold Ma'at, a fundamental concept in ancient Egyptian belief representing cosmic order, balance, and justice. But to do that, they couldn't act merely as a typical Roman emperor. They had to become a pharaoh. That's why, on this slab, Tiberius is shown standing before three major Egyptian deities, Amun, Mut, and Khonsu. These gods were widely worshipped in Luxor, and appearing alongside them carried deep significance. It shows that Tiberius was not just a distant ruler, but someone legitimized within the local belief system. In other words, he had to take on the role of a pharaoh in order to be accepted by both the gods and the people. Sounds like a clever adaptation, doesn't it? In fact, Roman emperors being depicted in Egyptian style was not uncommon, especially in religious contexts. However, what's interesting is that outside of temple carvings and stelae like this, they still maintain their Roman identity on coins and official statues. One person, two identities. One for the Roman Empire and one for the people of Egypt. Researcher Wagdi believes this slab is not just a piece of art, but a reflection of an entire system of thought and governance at the time. In that system, emperors were portrayed as builders and protectors of temples, whether or not they actually performed those roles in reality. What mattered wasn't necessarily what they did, but how they were represented. Additionally, the slab may once have been mounted on an outer wall of the temple, serving as an architectural marker to commemorate the restoration of part of the Karnak complex. You see, just a single stone slab can contain an entire story about power, religion, and how humans adapt to one another's cultures. Fascinating, isn't it? 2,200-year-old iPhone found in an ancient tomb in Russia. If I told you that archaeologists excavated an ancient tomb, opened it, and found something that looked exactly like an iPhone, how would you react? Hard to believe, right? But this actually happened in 2016, in a remote area deep within the Tuva Mountains, a federal subject of Russia near the Mongolian border. On that day, As an archaeological team was carefully excavating at the ancient Alatay burial site, they unexpectedly discovered the grave of a woman. With no confirmed identity, they gave her the nickname Natasha, a name that feels both familiar and brings the story to life. But what left everyone stunned wasn't the skeleton itself. It was a strange object lying right beside her. A rectangular item, about 7 by 3.5 inches, grayish-black in color, and remarkably similar in appearance to a modern smartphone. At first glance, it looked just like an iPhone, and that's how the name Natasha's iPhone was born. But as you know, the iPhone didn't appear until 2007. So how could something that looks so similar be found in a tomb that's thousands of years old? That question quickly stirred excitement among researchers. Some even entertained bold time travel theories. However, as experts began to analyze the object more carefully, the truth slowly came to light. No less fascinating. Based on Wuchu coins found in the tomb, they determined that the object dates back around 2,200 years to the time of the Xiongnu. It was crafted from black stone and decorated with turquoise, carnelian, and mother-of-pearl, details that suggest its owner was far from ordinary. In the end, archaeologists concluded that this so-called ancient iPhone was actually just a belt buckle. It may sound simple, but imagine living in that time, long before modern technology, and encountering an object with such a strikingly modern design. It's enough to send chills down your spine. As it turns out, more than 2,000 years ago, nomadic women wore belts with large stone buckles, not only as decoration, but also as symbols of status. According to Dr. Pavel Leos, the head of the excavation team, this is one of the most fascinating discoveries in the region. And the story doesn't stop with just an ancient iPhone. The Alatay site has even been nicknamed the Atlantis of Russia because it lies beneath a massive reservoir formed by the Sayano-Shushenskaya hydroelectric dam. The reservoir spans over 240 square miles. But what makes it unique is that during the summer, water levels drop, revealing a dry, desert-like landscape where scientists have a brief window to uncover secrets buried for thousands of years. In this area alone, as many as 110 ancient graves emerge on these temporary islands when the water recedes. Nearby, the Terezin site contains at least 32 more graves. Some of these tombs lie as deep as 56 feet underwater, as if history itself were trying to hide from the modern world. And Natasha is far from the only discovery. Previously, archaeologists uncovered a skeleton known as the Sleeping Beauty, named for the woman buried in a beautifully preserved silk garment. At first, they believed she was a priestess, but after analyzing the tools buried with her, they realized she was actually a leather designer, a highly skilled craftsperson of her time. Another skeleton belonged to a weaver, buried alongside her loom, as if she had carried her entire life with her into the afterlife. All of this has turned the region into a vast historical treasure, spanning from the Bronze Age all the way to the era of Genghis Khan. And now, back to the original question. If you were the first person to see that 2,200-year-old iPhone, would you trust science? Or would you start to wonder whether humanity's past still holds mysteries far beyond our imagination? You see, the ancient world is truly fascinating, isn't it? From objects that seem like they traveled through time, to mysterious skeletons and legendary mummies, to artifacts that appear and then disappear in ways we can't quite explain. Together, they create a vast and deeply mysterious archaeological picture. So, which discovery impressed you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any future discoveries from ancient history. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.